Cool. Well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. You got so much going on as a writer, an artist, an activist. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Great, me too.
So let's begin our conversation with, you know, we're entering a new year, but surviving this pandemic created so many seismic waves in our life. How much of living through that pandemic still reverberates in the work and the things that you do with your life right now?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that the other day, and it affected in many different ways. In some ways, it didn't impact me very much, particularly as a writer, since most of what you're doing when you're writing is by yourself. So in that respect, it gave me more time to write, which was a positive. But in terms of, as you mentioned, kind of the activism and the social motivations that I have, what happened during the pandemic in terms of, at least initially, government responses, people's lives being impacted from it. Uh, Even though that didn't happen to me or many of my close family members, just the idea of it that, we don't care for each other, we don't look after each other. uh, I actually found that abhorrent, and it gave me even more motivation to write because I try to deal with a lot of these social issues about responsibility and so on in my painting and in my writing. So that was, in some respects, a motivating factor for me.
So take me back. I'm curious to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, career day, and one of the
Right.
kids wanted to know what you did for a living and asked you, how would you answer them?
Well, the first thing I'd ask them is, how much time do you have? Because it's a lot of different things. I try to segment it. One of which is my background is in international finance. So I still do a little bit of that and consulting with a small venture capital firm. But most of my time is taken up either with the writing or my art with the painting. In fact, I'm actually went back to school to get my master's degree in painting, which I
Cool.
should be getting by think it's May. As if all things go well, I'll be graduating then. So, I try to mix it up with different things, and then I'm on the board of a number of not-for-profit organizations. So I try to give back in terms of philanthropy and also time to help them fulfill their missions.
I'm curious. I'm a visual artist myself. What have you learned? The process of creating is that sometimes you put a mirror up in front of you. There's all these self-revelatory things you figure out. What did getting a master's degree in painting teach you? What did you learn in that process?
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't know what to expect going into it.
Yeah.
But coming out of it, I actually got what I should have thought I would get out of it. It's trying to break out of my routines. When particularly in art, you get comfortable with doing things a certain way and producing art. So when I've had, some success in doing that, but I wanted to challenge myself. And by going to the art school, one of the big things that you get in art school is critiques. And you get maybe three or four in one day, and after a certain point, it's like, that's enough. Okay. But at some point you look at it and some of the critiques really resonate, things that you don't want to do, you should do, but you actually don't actually do them.
Yeah.
And when you get someone who gives you a critique that hits on that, at some point you go, yeah, you're right. I
Yeah.
gotta do that.
That
So I was
totally.
experimenting with different materials and different ideas and all that. And so that was interesting for me. It was helpful.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid? Was it always going to be creative or what was your dream?
Well, it depends on what age, because
Yeah.
if you go way back when I was like 5 years old, I think I had mentioned I wanted to be a rabbi.
Okay.
Uh, but I got rid of that pretty quickly. Honestly, I liked the idea of finance. I wanted to go into finance because I figured that's kind of the core of what makes everything work. And just that concept was really interesting. And through my career in finance, I tried to figure out ways of using that to create good for people as well. So one of the jobs that I guess I kind of created at one of the large companies I worked at was a social performance group where we looked at things like environmental issues. We looked at things like microfinance, where banks that give money to people who sometimes earn less than $1 a day. So I try to keep that up with it because it's the finance is a means to an end, and you can either be like an Elon Musk and the ends is making billions of dollars, or it could be helping people out. And there are both of those out there. I hopefully am more of the latter than the former. Um, and as part of that idea of wanting to help people, I always thought about writing. I thought about writing before I actually thought about painting. And, I felt I had something to say to people, how to approach the world, how to look at the world. And initially, I was looking at maybe not writing fiction, but just, a book of ideas and concepts. And when I sat down to do that, I found that extremely difficult to do
Yeah,
because I'd look at it and basically what it would be is like, hey, don't do bad stuff to people.
yeah.
And that wasn't enough to get published. So I figured, okay, well, how do I approach this? So I wanted to approach it in kind of a scientific way where you set up a problem and then you try to answer the problem. So the book itself is just setting up a series of situations that I put the characters in. I have a number of different characters who will react differently to the same situation, and it's more to let the reader put themselves within the book so that they can see, well, what would I do? Why is this the way to do it versus that the way to do it? So that was kind of a journey, and that was to me more interesting because I could then work out how I would react to different situations. And so I found it a kind of an intriguing way to approach it.
So, as a writer, what was the first book that you read growing up that really opened up the windows to you reading more or eventually being a writer?
Well, I mean, there were a number of books that I liked, like for example, Frank Herbert's book Dune.
Yeah,
Or I really liked Isaac Asimov, also Kurt Vonnegut, because I thought their books were about something.
yeah.
And so the fact that books can be meaningful, and even the books like 1984, which I've recently reread, and it's scary how accurate that is these days.
Yeah.
So you can change hearts and minds with it. So I go back and think about the books that I could identify with, and it was the ones that had weren't just a story, but there was a social meaning behind the story.
So, as a painter, what was the first painting? What hedged you to get into art and create it? What was that?
Well, what got me into doing art was not knowing that much about it.
Yeah.
Uh, Growing up, we'd be dragged to art museums, and I remember as a little kid, you'd run from one gallery to the other to find the bench to sit on, and waited till your parents were done looking at the paintings.
Yeah.
So I figured, well, if I really want to get into this, I should learn a little bit more about painting.
Yeah.
So I was living in Manhattan at the time, and there was one of the local churches had craft classes, and one of the classes was a painting class. So I figured, well, maybe if I learn how to do painting, I'll understand it better. And that was the only reason I did that. And I started taking the classes and I was like, yeah, I really like this. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and then read more and more about techniques and concepts in painting as well. And that was back in 1980, and I've been basically doing it consistently since then.
So, you're obviously highly motivated and you've done quite a bit. Who has been that bedrock for you, that inspiration or hero in your life?
Well, I don't know if hero, but honestly, it's my wife. She's got she's very. I mean, she was brought up in a family of architects who were very big into design and all that. And you know, if I'm working on a piece and I know it's not right, but I don't want to admit that, I ask my I ask my wife what she thinks, and she tells me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's usually what I know myself, but it kind of forces me to look at the reality of what I'm doing. And I think it's made me, a better artist, a better writer,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
So what's your favorite art gallery, favorite artist that you've seen that always brings you comfort?
Uh, well, I like MoMA in New York.
Yeah.
I'm more into modern art and like sort of the 1960s, like Rothko. I
Yeah.
like quite a bit. The color fields, yeah. Joseph Albers also with the color fields. Um, I like Kandinsky as well. Actually, I've written a couple of papers in school that have looked at his approach. So yeah, those are some of them.
So, as far as activism is concerned, who do you admire that's an activist that's alive today that you really admire what they're doing? Because we're really kind of this we're in a strange Bob Dylan-esque time where there's a lot going on. There's so much, and I think we're so close to it. It's hard for us to realize how many things are happening. But in the modern landscape of activism, who do you look up to? Who do you admire?
Well, I mean, it's not big names.
Yeah,
It's people that I work with. So, for example, I'm one of the not-for-profits I'm the board of is called Battery Dance, and Jonathan Hollander is the person who found that. And it's not just a dance company; they do quite a bit of social good as well. So, for example, they'll do programs in the United States and in all over the world, really a lot of it through the State Department called Dancing to Connect, where they work with at-risk teens, and through dance, they have them kind of grow and understand themselves. So, for example, they did a program in Germany where there are two different educational tracks there. One, if you're going on to college, and the other is if they've forgotten about you. And they worked with the group where they've forgotten about them. And the kids don't have a lot of self-esteem. And th in a very short period of time, what the dance company does is have the kids create a dance program and perform it in front of a large audience. And the dancers themselves from Battery Dance are superb dancers, but this is even, it brings it to another level. In China, in South Korea, sorry, they work with kids who were escaped from North Korea or China. In India, they work with kids who were subject to the sex trade there. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's just amazing what they do. And so I
absolutely.
admire what they do. I'm happy to help them. The other not-for-profit I'm currently on, I've been on others, but is a farm sanctuary where they take in rescued animals, and they try to show people the inner lives of these animals themselves. And that's really very powerful as well. So the people who run those organizations, that one's called Woodstock Farm Sanctuary and Battery Dance. I mean, those are the types of people I admire.
So how do you balance this? What motivates you to get up every day to create art, to create words, to be an activist, to do all of these things business wise? What is that collective motivation for you to balance it all?
I just like doing things that are interesting.
Yeah,
That's kind of been my career. It's not been thought out. I need to do this, and this. It's more, that's interesting, so I'll do that. And, that's interesting, so I'll do that. And it probably hasn't worked out in terms of like, I'm not a CEO of a major corporation or anything like that, but quite honestly, I don't want to be.
yeah.
Uh, I want to do things that are interesting. I want to do things that challenge me. And so that's really what my motivating factor is. What can I do today? I mean, I started going to art school when I was, what is it, 67? Why do that? I mean, everyone's looking at me there, why do that? And it's just because it seems like it'd be interesting to do, and so I do.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into a younger version of you, let's say 18 years old, and you can give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you're living now, the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, just to do things sooner.
Yeah.
It's but I'm not even sure that that would be. that would be feasible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting. I was walking through Washington Square Park, and some people came up. They were doing filming. They probably go to NYU Film School or something, and they're asking. He says, "Well, in your life, what do you regret?" And I thought about it, and I said, "I don't really regret anything. I mean, I've
Yeah.
done what I wanted to do, and
Mhm.
maybe doing some of the things that I've been doing sooner, but I've been pretty satisfied with the way things have turned out."
So, more specifically with art, I find it interesting also as a visual artist that when people get involved with artwork, it's a lifetime commitment. It's different from other things. It's not temporal at all. They want that in their lives. It's a real commitment. Has there been a sale or has there been someone that's gotten your artwork that was real seminal to you that you remember that was special, or they've talked to you after they got it, how much they liked it, or something along those lines? Has that happened for you?
No, you know, with a lot, I don't know when you do the visual art, but when I do it, I do it more for me,
Yeah,
because it means something to me. And then if other people share that, I think that's great.
yeah,
I mean, when I do art shows, they like the art fairs, people will come by, and some of the people who, I end up having really interesting discussions with are not in the position to buy art,
yeah.
particularly, at the levels that I sell it at. But, they're very interesting. And then you got other ones. I remember one corporate art collector I was talking to and showed her one of the paintings, and her comment on it was, "It's too green." And I look at her, it's like, I don't know what to do with that. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of all of the things that you've done and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I mean, I'm really proud of the books. I mean, this is the Quasi-Crystal, which is the one that just came out, is the third book in the series, and you know, I've been really pleased with the reviews that I've been getting on the books. Not only have they generally been positive, but the reviewers seem to really get what I'm trying to do. It's not just a fantasy story, it's a story about something. It's got moral questions in there, moral dilemmas in there. It challenges people to kind of think for themselves and to get out of preconceived notions. And so, I'd really like that to be kind of my signature piece. And right now it's three books. I'm working with an editor. The fourth book is almost done. And then I have ideas for a few more within this whole, we call the Wanderer series.
So everyone out there has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, readers, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, all right. Now I've got to be try to be humble in all this stuff too. I don't know. Uh, yeah, I mean, I just want to be the type of person that seems to care about others, that is open-minded about different points of view, and sensitive to that. And if I can do that, then I think that's being a good person and can help other people out as well. I mean, I feel through the philanthropic work that I do that it's important that people who have uh, been who've had like all the advantages are able to give back to people to help other people, give them a leg up. And I try to do that as well and so if I can do that, if I can be perceived as somebody who cares about others and actually does something to help them, then yeah, that would be great.
So, JD, if anyone wants to pick up your latest book, they want to see your artwork, they want to get your previous books, find out what you're doing with activists, anything that's going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
Well, for the books are all listed on Amazon. So let's see, as a good author, I always have to have the books around,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So Crystal is the last one. But then the other one was a two-volume called The Silver Forest. So on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I have a website that's jdrash.com. For the painting, there are two websites. One is Rasch Art, Raschart, rashart.com. There's also a group that I formed of other artists who use scientific imagery in their work. And so we have a group of about 9 of us, and that website is Lamina Project, Lamina project.com. So that's where people can find out more about me. And
Excellent. This has been wonderful, JD. I will put all of those in the show notes. Thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you for your creativity. I appreciate your story today.
all right, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Take care.